Hello everyone and welcome. Today we're doing the Max Payne Iceberg, and since this is the first Iceberg video on the channel, I'm quickly going to explain the concept. So a massive fan will create an image like this that contains fan theories, inside jokes, lore, random facts, stuff like that, and they'll be separated into different layers. The top layer contains stuff that casual players will know, and then it progresses down to the super obscure stuff. I will try and explain everything well enough so that even if you haven't played the games you can still enjoy and understand the video. Obviously, massive spoilers ahead for the Max Payne trilogy. Tier 1, Max is aware. On two separate occasions, Max is told that he's in a video game. In the first game, Nicole Horn, the game's main villain, injects Max with the drug Valkyr, causing him to overdose. Whilst he's overdosing, you play as Max, and in the first room on the table there's a letter you can interact with. The first time you read it, it will say you're in a graphic novel because that's the style of the cutscenes, but if you reread the letter, it will then say you're in a computer game, and Max will then acknowledge the in-game user interface. The second time is in the sequel, when after being shot in the head you enter a dream sequence, and towards the end, whilst Mona and Winterson are arguing, you can find a flip chart that says wake up, you're in a computer game. Since both of these take place inside his head, it's his subconscious that's telling him that he's in a video game, thus meaning deep down he is aware that he's in a video game. BB covered up Valkyr developments. BB is one of the villains in the first game. He's a drug enforcement agent who's actually revealed to be a mole for the Acer Corporation, who are secretly making the illegal Valkyr drug. At the start of the game, he's the one who arranges for Max and Balder to have a meeting at the Roscoe Street station, which just so happens to be the same place and time where the Mafia are robbing the nearby bank via the subway. So he sets them up, hoping they'd both get killed by the mobsters, but then he kills Alex himself from an angle that Max can't see who fired the shot. So the idea that he was covering up developments on the Valkyr case before the game takes place is highly likely, especially since he calls the meeting after they've made their first break in the case for over 3 years. Ragnarok. Ragnarok is a gothic-themed private nightclub that is owned by Jack Lupino and is a level in Max Payne 1. The building's exterior looks similar to a church, however inside it has multiple satanic symbols throughout the building, including a massive pentagram inside a double circle on the dance floor. It also reappears in Max Payne 2, however the building has been renovated into a restaurant by Vlad, now called Vodka, but you can find an old Ragnarok sign stuffed away inside one of the rooms. Tier 2, Alfred Woden was blackmailed. Alfred Woden is a highly influential member of the Inner Circle, a secret society with control over New York's organised crime. It's revealed that in Candy Dawn's diary she records herself having sex with clients, and that she sold a tape of her and a one-eyed man to an older woman. Later on in the game, Max finds the tape and believes that Nicole Horn used it as blackmail to stop the Inner Circle from revealing all her illegal activities. Max keeps the tape though in case Woden doesn't keep his promise of making sure that he's a free man for killing Nicole, so this could refer to either of the two times that he was blackmailed, most likely the first one though. Buffy is canon, vampires are real. This is a reference to the Buffy the Vampire Slayer Easter egg in Part 1 Chapter 3 of the first game. In the level you can find a semi-hidden room with a dead body lying on the floor that has a stake in their back and the word Buffy written in blood beside them. You give Max a painkiller addiction. I think this was a popular theory after the first two games that was then confirmed with the release of Max Payne 3. In all three of the games, Max takes painkillers to regain health, and by the time we get to the third game we see Max frequently in cutscenes downing painkillers with alcohol, and he even admits that he has an addiction problem. Tier 3, Max was a Valkyr addict. This is a theory that I've seen variations of online, so I'll try and touch on all of the ones that I've seen. So some people believe that Max's bullet time ability and his ability to take down multiple waves of trained men comes from taking Valkyr. Remember, Valkyr was originally being funded by the US military as a performance enhancer for their soldiers. They believe that it also allowed them to survive being shot so many times throughout the games, including being shot in the head off Vlad in the second. They also theorised that Mona could have taken Valkyr to cope with the death of her sister, which would explain how she survived being shot in the head at the end of the first game, and also her ability to use bullet time in Max Payne 2. Instead of injecting Valkyr like other users, it's possible that the painkillers that Max takes could contain a small amount of Valkyr, and due to the amount of painkillers that he takes in the games, he receives the effects of Valkyr without even knowing it. The other two that I've seen can kind of be moulded into one. They think that Max was a Valkyr addict that killed his own wife. That's based on the dream nightmare sequences where Max blames himself for his wife and his daughter's deaths. And an extension of that is that all the events of Max Payne 1 are hallucinations. Because Valkyr makes its users extremely paranoid and causes increased aggression and violence, they think that Max took Valkyr and went on a rampage killing everybody in the subway station. That he can't dodge bullets, he just imagines that the innocent and unarmed civilians are mobsters robbing a bank. He kills his friend Alex and then just wanders around shooting people for 3 days, taking more and more Valkyr and imagining himself to be taking down massive crime syndicates. Now I personally don't believe the second one of him killing his wife and the first game being a hallucination. However, I actually like the idea that the painkillers could contain trace amounts of Valkyr and that being the reason behind Max's abilities. Vinny died in the first game. Vinny Gogniti is a character that appears in Max Payne 1 and 2, and I was surprised when he appeared in the second game because in the first game Max shoots him in the stomach, then chases him for a wee bit before finally catching him and getting him to reveal where his boss Lupino is hiding out. Max leaves him for what I and a couple others online thought for dead, lying in the snow bleeding out, but then he just shows up in the second. In addition to this is that in the 98 beta video there is a cutscene showing Max killing Vinny. Mona died in the first game. Towards the end of the game, Mona appears in an elevator before being shot in the head, and Max even notes that she's lying there stone cold dead. However, the doors close and when they open again a few minutes later, the elevator is covered in blood but the body's gone. Mona dies in the first game could also tie into the Mona was an illusion in the second game theory, which I've kind of seen floating about, which does sound like a cool theory, but when you realise how many people interact with her in the second game, it destroys the theory. Fire_test2.bik. In Icebergs you get random stuff thrown in, and this is one of them. As far as I can tell, this is just an unused fire animation for Max Payne 3. Max Payne 2 was the end. It seems like the more hardcore fans look down on the third game in the series, and I completely understand why. Despite it being a good game in my opinion, it's got a different feeling from the other two in both style and presentation, not to mention it being developed by Rockstar instead of Remedy. Another thing for me though is that Max Payne 2's ending puts a nice bow on the story and closes up all the loose ends. After losing Mona, Max is finally able to accept the loss of his wife and start anew, but in Max Payne 3 he's still a depressed guy addicted to drink and painkillers. Now, I wasn't expecting the guy to become a cheery happy guy and just move on, but I don't know, I thought he would have moved on in some way, but anyway, speaking of moving on, Tier 4. Remedy Shared Universe. Okay, I'm going to try and make this as short and simple as possible without spoiling any of the other games made by Remedy. Remedy Entertainment is a Finnish game developer studio that has made the first two Max Payne games, Alan Wake, Alan Wake's American Nightmare, Alan Wake 2, which is currently in development, Quantum Break, and most recently Control. So how are these games connected? Alan Wake is a successful writer and wrote the book series Alex Casey, which follows a hard-boiled New York detective and has multiple similarities to Max Payne. During Alan Wake, you can pick up manuscript pages of a book Alan was writing, and two of the pages talk about the death of Alex Casey. Have a listen to them.
It's true what they say about the fall and the sudden stop at the end. I'd lain here in the snow while the lurid chain of scenes that had led me here kept playing in my head. A rerun of my own private snuff movie. A memory of my corpse. Alone at my own wake. Thinking in metaphors again. The femme fatale was gone. Only a sour taste remained of the kiss that killed me. This was a late goodbye. 13 years after I'd gotten my revenge, it had finally caught up with me. It had been a long time to bear the pain. My blood painted the snow red. A gruesome slushy dissolved all the scattered painkillers and leisurely dripped down to the sewer, mingling with the bile of the city, becoming one with it. I can see them now, my wife and my baby. Honey, I'm home.
One of the big things to note here is that these pages are read out by James McCaffrey, the voice actor for Max Payne, unlike all the other pages which are read out by Alan himself. So why is the book series called Alex Casey and not Max Payne? In 2002, Remedy sold the Max Payne brand to Take-Two Interactive for $34 million, thus no longer being able to use the character anymore without permission. That's also the reason why Max Payne 3 was developed by Rockstar, not Remedy, because when they sold the brand, part of the deal was that Remedy would make the sequel, Max Payne 2, and then that was them finished with the IP. But back to the shared universe, Alan Wake ties in with Quantum Break, as you can find the TV show Night Springs playing in both games, and in Control there's a note you can find talking about the potential purchase and revival of the TV show. Now there is a lot more, and I mean a lot more connecting the games, but that's the simplest non-spoilers version. I might do a video on everything in the future about how it's all connected, but that'll be a good time down the line. Cut Kalashnikov. The Kalashnikov assault rifle, more better known as the AK-47, was originally going to be in Max Payne 1 but was cut. We know this due to unused files that have been found in the game, but also there's a cutscene where we see Boris Dime holding one. 9/11. So I had to Google this one, but in Max Payne 1 for PC, the Twin Towers are visible in the city skyline and on posters, but in the console versions of the game, which were released after 9/11, the towers have been removed from the game. I wouldn't have got this one if it wasn't for the post made by the Max Payne FANPAGE Twitter account, so thanks to them. Max Payne 3 was originally set in Russia. Back in February 2019, a user called Apollo Thunder on the GTA forums found concept art from Johannes Muck, the former lead concept artist at Rockstar Vienna. With it dated back in 2005, people assumed it was concept art for GTA 4, but after contacting Johannes, it was revealed to actually be concept art for Max Payne 3. The original plan, according to him, was for the game to be set in Russia. However, after Rockstar Vienna was shut down and Rockstar Vancouver and San Diego took over development of the game, the location was scrapped in favour for Brazil. Tier 5, Max Payne 1's Secret 4th Part. The first game, if you haven't played it, has 25 missions spread across 3 parts. However, if you can beat the game on the hardest difficulty, you unlock a secret mission where you take on a wave of enemies and slow-mo, then get to explore a small art gallery afterwards that has pictures from the dev team in it and also a Remedy logo. Max Heat. Alright, this is a fun one. Max Heat was one of the original names for Max Payne during development, and as an inside joke, they decided to have a character called Max Heat exist in the game as an adult film star. In Max Payne 1, if you keep an eye out in Lupino's hotel, you can find Max Heat magazines, and in the second game, you can get a TV ad for the film Max Heat 7 starring the man himself. Cancelled Dreamcast port. So during development of the first game, it was announced Remedy were targeting release on the PC and Dreamcast. However, after delaying it a few times, they completely scrapped the Dreamcast version. I have seen online that one of the founders of Remedy said that they never actually saw the game running on Dreamcast, but IGN has a video on their YouTube claiming to be Dreamcast gameplay. However, that links into something further down the iceberg, so we'll come back to it. Max Payne movies. In 2008 there was a Max Payne film starring Mark Wahlberg as Max and Mila Kunis as Mona Sachs that received terrible reviews. The trailer for it was actually pretty decent, however it's currently sitting at a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. There's also some fan films online, I'll link them all down below in the description, but most of them are only 2 to 3 minutes long, apart from one, Retribution, which is 45 minutes long. If you're a big Max Payne fan with some time to kill, feel free to check them out. Tier 6. Okay, we are on the bottom tier. Max overdoses in Max Payne 3. In the opening cutscene of Max Payne 3, we see Max drinking and taking pills, then stumbling around and spewing. In this theory, made by the creator of the Iceberg, they see the events of Max Payne 3 as all in Max's head, that he imagines the events of the game after overdosing, and that's why the style and tone of the game are so much different from the other two. Whilst I don't agree with it, I don't hate it. I can see where they're coming from, and that's the great thing about art. It's all up to people's interpretation, and video games are a form of art. Max Payne GBA. Yeah, so I guess this might be a surprise to some people, but Max Payne 1 did release for the Game Boy Advance in 2003, about 2 or so months after the second game was released. This is one of those things that I just always assumed was common knowledge, as the Game Boy Advanced version was me and my brother's introduction to Max Payne back when we were kids, but yeah, now you know. It was actually a really good game. I'll throw some gameplay on the screen for those watching, but it was a really well done demake. Max Payne 1998 beta. So there's a video online showing what Max Payne looked like early in its development, and it actually comes from IGN's Dreamcast gameplay video, which I mentioned earlier. Despite the quality not being that great, it shows us a much more darker and gothic style of game. There's enemies, weapons and locations that never appeared in the final version of the game, as well as it showing us Max killing Vinny. If you want to check out the video, I'll have it linked in the description. And finally, Max Payne 4. Will we ever see a 4th entry in the Max Payne franchise? I personally don't think so. With the way that 3 ends, with Max literally walking into the sunset, I think his story's complete. With the 10-year gap between 2 and 3, we could potentially have a game set in that time period, but with the development hell that 3 got stuck in, I think the most realistic option, if Rockstar were ever revisit the series, would be a complete remake of the first game to try and bring in a newer audience to the franchise. If you are new to Max Payne and have never played the games and you want to try them, they're all available on PC, but 1 and 2 do have some bugs, more so 1. If you're on the Xbox, all 3 games are available on backwards compatibility, so you can buy the disc version of the originals or you can just buy them digitally from Xbox. And if you're on PlayStation, you're out of luck, as only the first one is available on PS4. So that was the Max Payne Iceberg. I hope you enjoyed the video and thank you for making it to the end. I'm doing more Iceberg videos on games in the future, so be sure to subscribe if that's something that would interest you. And also thanks to Dark Matter 52 on Reddit for creating the Iceberg. I'm out. Peace.